G'day guys, welcome back to True Eagle in the wake of Western Derby 60 finalising yesterday. We go down by 38 points to Fremantle in what was a ugly derby, I would say, in terms of skill level, that's for sure, and a pretty flat result. This is one of those times where I'm pleased that I've got 24 hours to think about the result and digest it a little bit better before getting on camera. I have done it in the past where I've done it straight after the game, and I'm glad I didn't this time because I've been able to think it through a little bit more and, emotionally detach a little bit from the game. And, one thing that I will say is even though I was pretty annoyed yesterday, it was an annoying game to watch for West Coast fans, I'm sure, and perhaps Fremantle fans to some extent. But I think for me, that the thought process I had today was if that opponent had been anyone else, of around the same quality as Fremantle. I don't know, someone like Sydney, who, Fremantle very nearly beat the week before, or the Western Bulldogs. I don't really know where Fremantle sits, but say a mid-table team, if that had been the result, probably would have been, okay with it. It just annoyed me a little bit more that it was Fremantle, and I think that 24 hours has given me a little bit of time to realise that. That doesn't mean it was a fun game to watch. It wasn't, and it was very annoying. I was pissed off from about quarter time. It started well enough. We kicked 3 of the first 5 goals. We were up by 5-6 points in that first quarter. But as soon as we lost the lead, when the score was about 19-20, I messaged 3 different group chats I'm in and said, the danger signs are already there. I've got alarm bells for this game. And I said I thought we would lose by 50 points. That was halfway through the first quarter. And I think if had Fremantle kicked more accurately, they probably would have won by 50 points. I got teased for it, but for me, the warning signs were there pretty early in this game. Namely, while the intensity was up and we were playing with a decent energy, I thought, and if you were not looking at any stats, you'd think we were matching them. For me, one thing that was very evident was how much harder we had to work than Fremantle to get the ball inside 50 for a start, to attack the goal face, namely because we were making so many mistakes. The skill error, I don't know if I've seen as bad a skill error performance or as bad a skill level performance in the last 4 years as I did yesterday. It was up there with any of the games that we've lost. I think the difference was we did actually keep trying for all 4 quarters. I will give them credit for that. We still got smashed in the midfield, but from right to the very end, at least the boys were running hard, which is a start. So just getting back to that moment in the first quarter when I realized this was going to go badly was just how hard we had to work. And I think it was either after one of our goals or when Fremantle hit the lead, you could just see how puffed out all the Eagles players were. And then I looked at the stats and it was like 20 inside 50s to 7 Fremantle's way. It didn't feel like that watching the game. But once I saw that, I had sort of come around to the fact that we were not going to win this game, unfortunately. And that's exactly the way it played out. So, yeah, really annoying. I think the first mistake that I made for this derby was letting myself have some hope. I mean, there was a lot of swirl around the game, and perhaps we could catch Fremantle napping. We did that 12 months ago. There was reason to believe, and I don't really regret that as such. But one thing I did wrong was watch last year's derby where we won. Right before going out to Optus Stadium with Dad, and I said, that might have been a bad idea because now anything other than a 10-goal win and I'll be disappointed. I was full of energy, full of beans, really wanted us to beat Fremantle, and in the end we weren't really good enough to even come that close. So again, still speaking broadly about the game, the flow of the game, I referenced how I thought the boys kept trying the whole way through. I stand by that. I don't know if it's a being at the game thing. I definitely feel that as someone who's watched the Eagles on TV for 2 years or on my laptop, being at the game does give you different perspectives, and you could see how hard we were running and chasing throughout, which is not to say that there weren't individuals that were not great in the contest or whatever. That's evident. But we get belted in contested ball every week. We get belted in the midfield every week. But our ability or our desire to keep chasing and hunting and trying to create pressure and scoring opportunities, I thought that was all right for the 4 quarters. And I think there are so many games in the past where I've thought, shit, I'll forgive skill errors as long as we keep trying. And technically, that's exactly what we did yesterday, except the skill levels were beyond terrible. There were just so many moments where we would have, I think this was also true in the Gold Coast game, but we got punished much worse for it. And I think Gold Coast are a better side than Fremantle as it stands. But we just have to run and make twice the amount of effort to cover for some of the mistakes that we're making. When you get a fluid passage of play where you can move the ball from, not even from one end to the other, but say from the midfield and create a scoring opportunity, say a forward marks it, that allows everyone to take a breather. We just didn't have fluid chains like that very often in this game, and we were just chasing us so much. So I don't actually think it's a fitness issue, and I don't believe necessarily that we can blame it on the Brisbane game last week. I think it was a product of our own inability to execute basic skills. So I think everyone could see that. It was a shocking game on that front. I do remember we started pretty poorly last year in terms of skill level, and we did get better. So hopefully this is an early season, fumbles kind of thing. The skill level is off. I get the impression that we're really gearing our training and our game plan around pressure and contest. And okay, the contest hasn't been there, admittedly, for 2 out of 3 weeks. I do wonder if we've sort of ignored skills training a little bit, and that's really starting to show. But for me, again, I think so much of this game, not the entire game, but so much of this game comes down to the midfield once again. 2 of our primary midfielders, in fact, all 3. I don't know how you'd rank it, but I'd say that Kelly, Graham, and Harley Reid are probably the 3 primary midfielders going into this game. I think Kelly had 18 touches, Graham had 18, and Reid had 15. And look, Harley Reid's 19, so I don't really necessarily put the same amount of expectation on him. But I guess what I'm saying is, with that lack of talent in the midfield, I don't know how many times I can keep getting annoyed that we're getting slaughtered in the midfield. I think we just have to accept this is going to happen over and over and over again, because this is the way we've built our list. We have not built a list with a competitive midfield. Last year, to some extent, I think we could say that West Coast did try and address their midfield issues. Okay, there was the pick 3 trade. We could have had Jagger Smith, but we did trade in Liam Baker and Jack Graham, and neither of them have been stars. I'll elaborate on Baker in a moment, but both have bolstered the midfield to some extent. Graham in round 1 was particularly good. Baker's intensity, I know his skill level can be off. It's quite frustrating at times, but at the same time, we're still better with him in there because he's in there having a crack. So there's Baker and Graham that we recruited. We also tried to get Chad Warner over the line last year. We tried to get James Peatling, and I don't know how close we got, but we were somewhat in the race for him. So, West Coast know about it, but we're just coming from so far back with respect to the talent in our midfield that I don't know how many times I can keep repeating it in my reviews. Almost have to gloss over it from now on because we are so deficient in that part of the ground. And I don't even know if we're in the position to drop someone like a Tim Kelly. But I'll tell you what, a starting midfield trio of Kelly, Reid and Graham, and I suppose Duggan's pinch hitting in there as well, not really a midfielder, that is by far and away the worst midfield in the league. So I hate to say it, but we are just going to have to get used to this. If you're not already, because it has been the case for about 4 years, our midfield is getting absolutely torched. That is probably the biggest thing. I suppose, to flip it on a positive, there's still some good signs from youth, right? So in particular, Ryan Marrick has had a good fortnight playing in the back half. I think against Brisbane, there were some late skill errors, but generally speaking, he's fine in the footy. He's the sort of guy we want fine in the footy and delivering it by foot. Tyrell Dewar, similarly, at least he's finding the ball. Typically our wings struggle to get their hands on the footy. But consistently, he's found more of the footy than, say, guys like Campbell Chesser or Luke Edwards when he was playing on the wing. And, he's probably getting similar numbers to Jaden Hunt. So that's a positive. At least there's a few guys around the periphery where, we're seeing some good signs. Ruben Jinbu, we've sort of gotten used to being good now, but he is pretty consistently good now. I'm just finding some positives, but highlighting once again the fact that none of them are midfielders. And it's just going to continue to be a problem. Look, Harley's out of form, absolutely. Again, strictly for his form, I will give him a bit of a mulligan because he is young. And I think people are overlooking the fact that, yes, he's unfit, but he also missed part of the preseason with a lower leg injury. I don't really buy into the fact that he came back fat. I think that was kind of a joke that got out of control because there was a distorted photo. I think genetically he's just not someone that has low body fat. Do you know what I mean? He's just carrying puppy fat. Could he have had a better preseason? Possibly, but I just don't think that's a massive cause for concern long term. And when I say long term, obviously we need to talk about Harley Reid and Oscar Allen, and there's some list management issues sort of bubbling away under the surface, and it's only round 3. But as a side note, I'm actually thinking I may or may not be able to have time to record a list management video this week and a GWS preview. I would try to do both, but let me know in the comments, what would you prefer if you could only have one? Do you want me to talk about Harley Reid, Oscar Allen, Chad Warner, and discussing them, or a GWS preview? So I can elaborate on that at a further date in terms of, what that looks like. But Harley once again had some moments in this game where his anger spilled out. Now, I don't remember if he gave away 50s or a free or anything like that, but it was still very obvious to see, starting fights, shoving Sarong. Look, I don't really care that much, but I would say it is probably now over the last couple of weeks really demonstrating how frustrated he is and possibly unhappy. But I think he's got a tough gig trying to be a primary midfielder in easily the worst midfield in the competition. I think that is tough for a 19-year-old, and I do think that if Dacos even, and I'm not saying Harley's as good as Dacos, but if Dacos had done that in a team as bad as West Coast, if he had to do the role that Harley is, I don't think he would be anywhere near as good as he was in his second year. Again, not really comparing them in terms of quality of players. I'm just saying we need to chill on the expectation for Harley, but I will also say that he probably just needs to calm the hell down. Two separate things there, just to be clear. Structurally, the team's looking interesting at the moment. So we did play Jack Williams and Oscar Allen forwards. McGovern has done a groin injury, which is very frustrating, but presumably he's going to miss next week. Again, I don't know if I'm going to do a preview for GWS at this early stage. I hope so, but my early thoughts are, do we throw someone like Oscar back? We saw that towards the end of the game. Mini threw him back, and I do wonder if that's possibly something that can build his confidence up a little bit. Now, I do have my own thoughts on Oscar Allen. I think there's been a lot of, again, alienating him a little bit because he's out of form. I'm a big Oscar fan. I think that he is out of form. I don't think he's playing absolutely horrendously. I think the truth is, with him and, say, a Waterman, if you compare those two, watching Allen, he really doesn't get any opportunities to really run and jump at the footy, and when he does, he is mistiming them, no doubt. He's out of form. But there's a lot of occasions where, he can't do things like Waterman can, which is wrestle and take a contested mark. And long story short, what I'm saying is I don't know if we're really optimizing Oscar Allen in the best way. So with Waterman back this week, presumably for the GWS game, I wonder if this is an opportunity to throw Oscar back in absence of someone else coming in. I believe Sandy Brock is playing well in the waffle, but are we confident with Harry Edwards and Sandy Brock being our key backs against GWS, who have Jesse Hogan, Aaron Cadman? That makes me a little bit nervous, the idea of both of them playing together. And Rhett Bazzo's back. I don't know how AFL ready he is. So that's one option there. I think there are a few nominations to drop. I did think Noah Long was lucky to keep his spot in the team this week. But, he was probably a lot better on the day than someone like a Matt Owies, who kicked a goal, and it might have been one of our first goals, but then only had 6 possessions for the game. Elijah Hewitt comes on in the last quarter as sub and has 6 possessions in that time alone. So I'm thinking that Owies could be on the chopping block, but I do also suspect the match committee might be a little bit too conservative to do that. However, just giving you my opinion, I think Owies could make his way out. I think Hewitt comes into the side as a midfielder. I would like to increase his exposure and integrate him back into the midfield more permanently. I understand why they've eased him in, but I thought in the last quarter he showed a good intensity, and if he's fit, if there is fitness there, which I believe there is, then I don't really see any reason why we can't start increasing his minutes in the actual midfield. It can't get any worse. Clay Hall is somebody that was probably very hard done by to not get selected last week. I think he led our contested possessions against Brisbane. That was one stat we actually did well in against them. I think we lost it by 1. He had 7 clearances. And you just look at the midfield performance the week following, where he's gone back to the waffle, and you think, shit, we could use a Clay Hall in the gut. So, he's a chance to come in. I would have thought Tom Gross, who's apparently playing well in the preseason waffle games, he's a chance to come in. So how this all looks, maybe Allen goes back for McGovern, Waterman goes to our forward line. Does Owies come out for a Tom Gross? Maybe make Tom Gross the sub, get Elijah Hewitt on the field. And I think we're probably at the point we should consider dropping Tim Kelly. It's really hard to make the argument right now that he's adding much. And, from a contested ball point of view, from a clearance point of view, I think Clay Hall could probably match what he's doing. And it's not as though he's doing a lot offensively with the ball either. Could he be, pushed into the forward line on a forward flank? Maybe. But I do think we do need to do something there. This is terrible. To cover off some other points that I think I've missed, surface level stuff. It was good to see Archery get reward for a couple of goals. He's actually had quite a few shots on goal for a second ruck so far. Kicking doesn't seem to be his A game. He really needs to work on that kicking routine, but it's nice to see him get a couple of goals. I thought he was good. Jack Williams Good to have him back in their side. It's a bit of a head scratcher why he was ever out of it, in my opinion. And maybe some special shout outs to Liam Ryan and Jamie Cripps. Geez, Jamie Cripps has his kicking boots on at the moment. His set shot game over the last couple of weeks has been really good. So it's good to see him in form. I wonder, I can't remember if I suggested we drop Cripps for Owies. I don't think I ever said that when I did my best 23 round one, but it did cross my mind. I was like, do we go Owies? He kicks more goals. Well, early days, Cripps is making a mockery of anyone who suggested that. I just can't remember if I'm one of them. So yeah, this has been a bit of a ranty and ravey kind of review. Did I elaborate on Liam Baker? Look, I think there's no doubt that his foot skills and skill errors do hurt us, but like I said before, I think we would be worse without him with his ground ball game and his intensity and speed. Like, he does offer a bit. And to be fair, Baker and Graham came in with a view to improving standards and intensity and hunger. And I think, to be honest, with the exception of maybe the Gold Coast game, I thought that was okay, certainly over the last 2 weeks. So we're seeing, a lift in our intensity and our desire to win. I can't really fault that over the last 2 weeks, but the skill level has really let us down. And I think, to be honest, Fremantle left some goals on the table in that game. So we've got the Giants next week. Doesn't get any easier. We've got Carlton, who love to ragdoll us even when they're not playing well. So I don't know, 1 week at a time. We can't fix the midfield in 1 week, but it'd be nice to see some opportunity for someone like a Clay Hall, considering he played well already at AFL level. And Tom Gross. I haven't seen much of Gross, but from what I'm hearing, won a clearance and ran to 50 and kicked a goal on the weekend. So that sounds nice. Anyway, Eagles fans, let me know what you're thinking. Again, it's 24 hours out. I've read a lot of social media. People aren't happy, and fair enough. Neither was I. But I've just been able to cool off a little bit. Remember that, it is the derby, but it is also just a game of footy, and a 6-goal loss on paper is not that bad. I wish we were better. But it's not going to happen overnight, and probably not anytime soon. So hopefully a couple of exciting ins this weekend. Hopefully we replicate the Brisbane level performance. They were challenged by Geelong and came back and won. So maybe that validates us a little bit. We nearly beat them, and so did Geelong. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you thought, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Up the Eagles.